Okay, it looks like we're ready to get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Election Day. Sorry, we're running a few minutes behind here. Before we get started, I just wanted to let everyone know kind of the ground rules. First, this webinar will be recorded. So if you are uncomfortable with that, you feel free to drop off now. But just know that anything that's said here may be used in a recording. We're going to start off first with both speakers giving remarks, and then we'll have an opportunity for Q&A. If you do want to ask a question, I'd ask you to raise your hand, and I will call on people. If for some reason that feature isn't working for you, you can put your message or your question in the chat or the Q&A, and I can read it out loud. So also this entire media availability is on the record, so you can feel free to use what's said here and attribute it to the speakers. Last thing, if you are called on for a question, if you could please just make sure to introduce yourself and your media outlet if I don't mention it, so that we know where you're calling in from and who you're with. So with that, I will turn it over to the secretary.
Well, thank you so much, Betsy. I was about to say good afternoon, but still good morning. Long mornings, but glad to be here with all of you. And just so happy to be here with George Stern, Jefferson County Clerk and Recorder, on another Colorado Election Day. Colorado's elections are the nation's gold standard because of access and security. Eligible Coloradans can still register and vote today at any voting center in the state. And of course, Coloradans can drop off their ballots at a ballot drop box or voting center. In fact, I just received the latest numbers showing how active Coloradans are really making their voices heard. So bear with me. But the turnout right now is at 76.6% of active registered voters. So that is really high. It's very exciting. Overall, as of 10 a.m., I believe this morning, the turnout was at 2,893,395 total votes, including 930,452 from Democrats, registered Democrats, 833,215 from registered Republicans, and 1,088,369 from unaffiliated voters. So we're just seeing continued high voter engagement. I think we are all really excited. We actually surpassed 2016's turnout as of 10 a.m. this morning. So Colorado's already set the bar, and we just can drive it up now. You know, it's a very exciting election. Of course, our election model sets the national standard and has been a favorite of Coloradans for years because voting is our way of shaping our future and of deciding who will lead our local, state, and on the national levels. Voting is our voice. And this year, obviously, things are a little different. We're in the midst of a pandemic, but things in terms of our elections are largely the same for the majority of Coloradans, maybe slightly improved. Most Coloradans will continue to vote their mail ballots, and we've increased access to make sure that it's even more accessible this year to return those ballots. Since I've been Secretary of State, we increased ballot drop boxes by over 50%. We have now over 380 across the state. We've increased the number of voting centers with over 340 voting centers open this election. We rolled out new initiatives like statewide ballot tracks. We are launching initiatives to counter disinformation, sent PPE to every county for election workers. And I also issued election rules to make sure that in-person voting is as safe as possible. And we are really seeing the benefits of all this work, all the work of the county clerks and everybody who has volunteered to serve as an election judge and just prioritize getting ballots in early. And today, of course, is the last day to vote this election day. Ballots must be received by 7 p.m. So just please drop off your ballot at a drop box or find a voting center to cast a ballot if you haven't done so already. And of course, you can also register to vote and cast a ballot all the way up to 7 p.m. With that, I would love to hear how it's going in Jefferson County with our wonderful Jefferson County Clerk, Stern. Thanks for joining us, George, and I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Secretary, and hello, everyone. As Secretary said, good morning, good election morning still for a little while here, and happy Election Day. It's finally here. So I'll just give a little bit of insight into what we're seeing in Jeffco and reiterating and expanding upon many of the points the Secretary made. First is we are really seeing that record turnout here in Jeffco. We've been proud to be leading the pack on ballots for most of the early voting. We had 79% of our active registered voters who had turned in their ballots through the end of yesterday. That was 70% in 2016, so 9% higher in 2020 versus 2016, and significantly more ballots as we've seen growth over those 4 years as well. But we're always striving for 100%, so reiterating the theme that get those ballots in today. We want to see all of those voters getting them in today. We recommend drop box if you've got your ballot in hand. As the Secretary mentioned, there's more drop boxes everywhere in the state right now. We've really doubled down in Jeffco, literally doubled down. In fact, we've got more than twice as many boxes in Jeffco now than we did 2 years ago. We're up to 36 throughout the county. Many of them don't even require you to get out of your car, so we encourage voters to use those. Use those now, use those early, but use those up until 7 p.m. The next point is that obviously if you need additional support, you need to register to vote still. You need to update your voter registration. You lost your ballot, you tore your ballot, your dog ate your ballot. We've seen it all before. Come into our in-person vote centers. We've got 32 throughout Jeffco. There's hundreds throughout the state, and we can help you there. We're watching wait times really closely, and in the first few hours of this morning, we've had 0-minute wait times at almost all of our sites almost all morning. That will no doubt increase those wait times as the day goes on, so we encourage voters to come early. But this is the beauty of our election system here in Colorado, is that not that many people need to vote in person, so we're not seeing the long election day lines that others are seeing. The final point is that results tonight. So because we had all these early voting, we're going to have the vast majority of our ballots counted by 7 p.m. tonight. And just after 7 p.m., we in Jeffco will be posting those results. My colleagues throughout the state will be posting those results. The Secretary of State's office will be gathering all of those results. But as always, results are not final until every vote is counted, and we count votes up to 9 days after the election in this election, so that military and overseas voters have time to get their ballots in, and people with ballot issues have time to cure them. But we're going to give you the vast majority of those results this evening. We'll keep updating throughout the night as we go. Thanks so much, Secretary, for having me, and along with the Secretary, happy to answer questions.
Well, thank you so much, George, for being on with us. I think that's amazing that you've doubled drop boxes. You know, at this point, there's one drop box per every 9,100 Coloradans or so, which just leads to a lot of accessibility. And it's great, especially when people, lots of enthusiasm, you know, lots of people want to vote this year to have that accessibility. So that's really neat.
All right, so I am not seeing any hands raised or any questions in the chat, but I'm not gonna end it right away. I'm gonna give folks a second here to, oh, we got one. All right. Nicole Fierro with Fox 31. Go ahead, Nicole.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted you guys to go over just where we're at today in terms of voter security, making sure everyone is safe going out to vote today or sending in their ballots, that their ballots are safe, and have there been any threats so far?
So I'll kick that off. In terms of security, Colorado is the safest state in which to cast a ballot from a cyber standpoint. And that's because every vote is a paper ballot. So they cannot be hacked. It just makes our entire state safer. My team, so members of the election division they will go out and do a secure build of all voting equipment. Most Coloradans do not use voting equipment. Most Coloradans vote their mail ballot. But if you do need that option, that equipment is securely built and it's not connected to the internet. And then a main feature of Colorado's election model is the risk limiting audit, which we will do after the election, which shows us to a statistical degree of certainty that the election results are correct and that we should have an extreme amount of confidence in them. In terms of voting in person, I've issued a series of election rules that were in place. They were adjusted a little bit from the statewide primary, but largely are the same. And the rules mandate that all election workers wear masks and follow public health guidelines. So local and state public health guidelines. We have social distancing in the polls. We are also requiring the sanitation of voting equipment between each use. So overall, Coloradans should be just confident in casting their ballot however they want to. Of course, if you have your mail ballot still at home, we really encourage just dropping it off at a drop box. There's no need to even go inside a building. You can just drop it off. It takes just all of a minute to do so. But if you do go vote in person, of course, you should feel confident that it will be as safe as possible. We have a lot more accessibility. We also have county clerks who have just been really innovative this year. And I would love for George to share a little bit of what Jeffco is doing. But that includes drive-through voter service and polling centers, outside polling centers, to make sure that we're really rising to the challenge of what it means to have an ample election in a pandemic.
Yeah, and so here in Jeffco, we have, in addition to the security measures the Secretary mentioned, the other thing I want to highlight in ballot processing is that everything in our election facility and every clerk's election facility is done by teams of bipartisan election judges. They've gone through FBI background checks to even be hired by us, and then they work together on everything from picking those ballots up from drop boxes to moving the ballots through our hallways to verifying the signatures on each ballot envelope to make sure that the voter is a registered voter we have on file who's proven their identity to us. And all of that's on surveillance, and all of that is also open to watchers from the various campaigns. I can tell you in every single one of our vote centers today and for the last few days, and in our ballot processing, we've had watchers from both major political parties there to see it, and they're giving us nothing but good reports that they feel confident in the integrity of the election. In person, as the Secretary mentioned, COVID being the concern, we've taken a number of precautions to make sure our sites are safe, including adding larger sites where people can spread out and ensure adequate social distancing. All of our judges are wearing masks. They go through daily screening. There's plexiglass up in between them and the voters. We sanitize the station in between every voter. And then we've also, as the Secretary said, gotten creative as many of our colleagues have. So we have the ability for voters who call us who don't want to go in person or can't go in person to be able to do a curbside pickup option. We've also added at our busiest sites an outdoor site. So you'll find at 3 of our busiest sites in Jeffco, a large tent in the parking lot. That helps both with crowd control. If we do get lines at some point tonight, we'll be able to put 2 times as many voters through in the same amount of time. It also gives voters an outdoor option on this beautiful Colorado day we're having here to vote outside and to vote where there's even more space and to not even have to go inside a building to cast that ballot. So ensuring that voters have options, but as we both said, we encourage them, if they have it, to use that mail ballot at a drop box where you don't even have to interact with anyone at all.
Nicole, you had a follow-up in the chat, so I'm going to let you just go ahead and pose that now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. The other question I had, you guys really covered the whole safety and security well with the COVID and stuff, but I know that you guys we've heard about FBI, the National Guard, local Denver, talking about safety and security in terms of like physical threats or even cyber threats today during this very, very important last day.
So starting off with cyber threats, I'm in the office right now. We're here with the National Guard and our security team monitoring all networks. So far, everything is looking really good. And to be very clear, what they are monitoring and protecting is election support system, so not the actual election itself. The actual election itself is really old school. It's a piece of paper, and then we audit it afterwards. So that's very secure. So far, everything is going really well. We're really happy to be joined by the National Guard. We've been working with the National Guard to monitor our election infrastructure now for several years. And it's a really neat initiative because the same group of Guards people who are here with us today have been here with us since 2019, the same team. So they were with us in the 2019 election. They participated with my team and all the county clerks in our statewide election disaster simulation in January. And then they were with us for the presidential primary, the state primary, and here today. They were also, by the way, they didn't just come on today, they were on yesterday and the days leading up. So everything quiet on the cyber front. Again, like we mentioned yesterday, of course, Coloradans should be weary and alert of disinformation. National intelligence has told us that there will be an increased risk of disinformation from foreign countries today and the days after the election. So just a reminder to go to a trusted source of election information, and that's your county clerk's website or the state website, the Secretary of State's website, which is govotecolorado.gov. When it comes to physical security, so far there hasn't been any physical security issues. There was one issue yesterday that we referred to the Attorney General that included two men dressed in military fatigue. What is the right word? Clothes. Sorry, I'm not thinking of the right word. Filming voters at a drop box. There was one man with open carry. The police immediately were dispatched. The two observers ended up leaving, and we referred that incident to the Attorney General for investigation and if it merits prosecution.
No instances here in Jeffco. We're monitoring everything very closely in terms of physical security and are in close contact with our friends in law enforcement here who are helping make sure that we're all staying vigilant and we're ready in case anything happens. We've got zero tolerance for voter intimidation. We won't allow it, and we'll make sure we stop it if we see it, but we have not seen it in Jeffco, and we hope to continue not seeing it through the end of election day today.
All right. I see that Quentin put some questions in the chat, so I'm actually going to unmute Quentin here. It's funny, the TV reporters always raise their hand and the print reporters always put them in the chat, but I'm going to have Quentin go here. All right, Quentin, you're up. Can you unmute?
Yeah, can you hear me, Betsy?
Yep, we can hear you okay.
Secretary, I wanted to just go back to something you just mentioned about the potential increase of disinformation. You do have an anti-misinformation initiative. I wonder what specific instances of disinformation or misinformation in recent days you've seen that most concern you. And one follow-up completely unrelated to that, just about what percent of the vote count do you expect at this point to be able to report this evening? Thank you.
Well, thank you for those questions. Starting with the last one first, we expect to report 70 to 80% of the total ballots cast tonight. A large part of the variable in that 10% differentiation will just depend on how many people show up today. Of course, a lot of those early votes are already processed and ready to go, and our office will report them out shortly after 7 p.m. when polls close. That's when the clerks will start sending us the results. Of course, election night results are never final results. As George mentioned, military and overseas ballots will continue to come in. Signature discrepancies will be fixed. There's a whole host of things that will happen in the days after the election. In terms of misinformation, there thankfully has not been a huge amount of public, disruptive misinformation, specifically in the last several days. So for example, something I referred to yesterday was the letter that was, we believe, sent from Iran to voters in Florida. I believe right now that there are bad robocalls going out in the state of Michigan and other states. There has been just the regular amount of disinformation. So those are things like, vote by mail is not secure, or, saying that the election, there's something wrong with the cyber protectiveness or the cyber strength of the election itself. So we're really just monitoring a normal stream of disinformation. And we just want to be ready so that if something does break through in a meaningful way on social media, that we can alert intelligence. Our teams are speaking with the DHS, FBI all the time. There's representatives from the FBI and DHS at the office right now looking at, they just join us on election day in monitoring the systems and also in monitoring disinformation. So I would say nothing has really popped up, but if you do want examples of misinformation, a lot of the stories about vote by mail a lot of them contain snippets of misinformation. I think the rate of, anytime that there's a major focus on fraud, that's not statistically proven. If you go to RTTV, the Russian newspaper, or the Iranian newspaper, and look at the coverage, you'll see a lot of misinformation there also. But luckily, there's nothing, no major campaigns at this point that are public to report.
All right, looks like we have a hand up here from Allison Sherry with Colorado Public Radio. Go ahead, Allison. You're muted though.
Oh, I have to give you permission to unmute me. Okay, I'm on. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, hi, Allison.
Hi, thanks, Secretary, for having this call, and I appreciate it, Clerk, too, for you being here, too. I just wanted to ask you to clarify something.
Sure.
And this may be a better question for the Attorney General or a local prosecutor, but from my read on the voter intimidation law in Colorado and statute, it's pretty vague, and it seems like it would be fairly difficult to prove voter intimidation unless it was really overt. I mean, I covered what happened in Littleton yesterday, and it's kind of unclear exactly which laws they were breaking, because filming somebody is not illegal. It's also not illegal to have open carry. I mean, I guess unless he was a felon or something, but it seems like it's kind of vague. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you're going to approach these cases, when it's not super overt.
That's a great question. So the voter intimidation law, we can pull and send it over to you. The basics of it is that you cannot impede someone from casting a ballot, and that's either from physically impeding them or impeding them from a fear-based situation. When it comes to voter intimidation, you're right. There is not a specific test, do X, Y, and Z, it's voter intimidation. There are things that are always per se voter intimidation, but a lot of times it's circumstantial. So filming a voter by itself may not be voter intimidation. Open carry by itself may not be voter intimidation. Not wearing a mask by itself may not be voter intimidation. But when you put together wearing tactical gear, open carry, no masks, and cameras filming in front of a drop box, that may rise to voter intimidation. So that's why we take those cases so seriously. We want to make sure that every Coloradan feels comfortable in exercising the franchise. Those are our constitutional rights to do so. So that's why police were immediately called and prosecutors are reviewing, including the Attorney General. Now, in terms of whether the Attorney General ultimately decides to bring a case, you will have to ask them where they are on that process. But we did take the scenario from yesterday very seriously and referred it immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any hands up or new questions in the chat. Anybody have anything, any last questions for the Secretary or the Clerk?
All this means is that we're having a really great election. There's not all that many questions because things are going pretty smoothly. So we'll continue to update all of you periodically with the numbers. And of course, if anything does arise, we're always happy to talk. And I would just really like to thank Clerk Stern. He's doing a fantastic job. I love to hear about the double amount of drop boxes in Jeffco for this election. That's pretty amazing. And I just really appreciate everything you're doing, Clerk, and hope you and all your election officials have a great day today.
Thank you. And we echo the feedback of you and your office, Secretary. It's been a great relationship, and things are going well so far statewide. So we hope it continues, and we hope those few remaining voters get their ballots in by 7 p.m. this evening.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Clerk Stern. Thank you, Betsy. And we'll talk to all of you very soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.